Thank you for tuning in to your one and only Track and Field Bleacher Report. I'm your official host here, the Trackhead, coming to you with a segment in which I'm going to call Let's Talk About It. In the Let's Talk About It segment, this is going to be a segment where I step away from the track, step away from the field, step away from the on-track action, and speak about and discuss issues and topics and just general things that go on within our sport and within sports in general. So in this segment, it's going to be about winning at all costs. So in this series of winning at all costs, I'm going to go through the age group, high school track issues, college scene, as well as the professional scene. So there'll be several videos and within this series, which I'm going to call winning at all costs. So let's talk about it. All right. So for many of us, we get introduced to the sport of track and field at a very young age. Sometimes, we're in elementary and middle school when we're introduced to the sport of track and field. And so usually when that happens, we're running summer track or we're in some type of, summer program, or maybe there's some type of private school that has, track programs within their elementary or middle school grades. So, but like I said, many of us are introduced to track and field before we even get to high school. So we'll talk about some of the things that happen in the age group or summer track scene prior to high school. Of course, there are several talented kids that are, shining stars while they're, 11, 12, 13, 14 years old, before they even get into high school. And so, when we see those kids, we really focus in on them, and, we really try to train them and pump them up to be the next best, the next great track and field athlete that's coming up through the scenes. Sometimes they break age group records. Sometimes they set, regional and national records that are, that were previously held by individuals or athletes that have gone on to be Olympic caliber gold medalists. So when they break those records from those type of individuals in the past, the pressure is set on them. There's a great deal of attention that's put on them, and so then they start to just try to figure out ways to win at any cost, and part of that is maybe overtraining those athletes. So overtraining could be a issue, so to speak, of that comes into play when parents, when coaches see these up and coming talented athletes, and they feel like, okay, we want to push them even further to be their best. And I mean, for more times than not, it's usually with a positive outcome, or with the best intention of the athlete. But sometimes even the greatest intention sometimes can have negative repercussions. So, pushing those athletes to train beyond with their bodies, because they're still growing. You're 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 years old. You're still growing. You're still going through puberty. So, you have to give your body some time to develop, especially on the female side. If, they miss their mark of development, then it can have negative repercussions down the road. So pushing athletes too soon, too hard, could definitely, cause them to be burnt out by the time they even get to high school, by the time they even get to the 11th and 12th grade, when colleges really, really start to focus on the recruiting aspect. Then they might not even be able to produce the same way they was when they were 11, 12, 13, 14 years old. So that's one of the issues that could come about. But it's not always an issue. But again, this segment is called winning at all costs. So what do you do when you have an athlete that clearly has the talent, that clearly demonstrates the talent at a young age? You see them at 10, 11, 12 years old, and they can throw far, they can jump far, they can run far, they can run fast. They can run fast. They can do all these amazing things at a young age and break all these type of records that have been set previously held by some Olympic caliber athletes. So what do you do when you come across and you see that? Of course you want to support, and of course as a parent or a coach or a mentor, you want to make sure that they are guided and directed, and they continue to develop themselves in the best way possible. But But sometimes it's a fine line of, pushing an athlete or putting too much too soon on a young athlete. So it happens a lot in the area of track and field because it's a competitive sport. When sometimes when you're in these summer track programs, or when you're in the AAU and Junior Olympics and things of that nature, of course it's a pride thing. It's a pride thing for the team. It's a pride thing for the parents. It's a pride thing for the coaches, and even it's a pride thing for the athletes themselves. So they want to be the best athletes they can be. So so sometimes you just kind of get caught up in the winning and the performance and being the best and being the greatest at such a young age that you may fail to realize, okay, what you're putting your body through, or you're not giving your body enough time to really truly develop in order to become the greatest, at a sustained period, further on in your athletic career. So how do you feel about that? Again, like I said, for me, I feel like it's just a fine line. Of course, you definitely want to support the younger athletes, but at the same time, you don't want to make it where they're burnt out before they even get to college, maybe before they even get to high school, or while they're in high school, where they just, they're so sick and tired of doing the sport, or they're not able to develop or able to, get, better in their performances. So, how do you guys feel about that? We can have a discussion about that's what this segment is about, just having discussions and again, just general open-ended, trying to be objective and real solidified answer to these issues, but just having discussions about it. So again, in the high school ranks, you have other aspects of winning of all costs. So again, say you had that athlete that I was discussing, that was in the age group, 10, 11, 12, 13, they were showing that they were clearly, a cut above the rest of their peers of their age. And so they're running times faster than, most high school kids. So now it's time for them to enter into the high school arena. And so, if you're not putting them into a private school, so you're going to, put them into a public school, but you live in an area, or your jurisdiction is in an area that the school that they're going to, have to attend, they don't have the best or the greatest facilities, or the best or the greatest, coach that can further develop and guide this athlete or your child to do better in the sport. So do you allow them to continue to train with their private coach or the coaches that they have in age group track? So, and if they do continue to train with their private coaches or the coaches they had at age group track, and they're running for a public high school team, if they're representing a public high school team, but they're training with someone on the side, how does that impact the rest of the team? So again, we have winning at all costs in that respect too, because a lot of times you have high school athletes that train solely with private coaches and not the high school that they attend. And so what does that do for the child, and what does that do for the other athletes that's on the team, that's the other children that's on the team? How does that make them feel? Does that make them feel like they're not good enough, or that this child has special privileges, or especially if that child is that's training with the private coach is succeeding and doing well, and running these fast times, and having these really high or great marks on the field, then how does that make their teammates, because if they're still representing that high school, how does that make their teammates feel if they're not able to achieve that same success, or the coaches or the environment that they're training in, they're not able to to get to those heights? So how does that make the team feel? And then you bring in those other athletes' parents, and you have jealousy that comes into play, and it's just a whole host of issues that could come out of that. So, but again, what do you do if it's in a scenario where you have this extremely talented athlete, but they're attending a high school? They have to attend a high school. They can't go to a private school. They don't have the funds, or there's not a private school around that can really facilitate what they need as far as academically and athletically. So what do you do as a parent, or even as a coach or a mentor, to make sure that kid that has demonstrated that they are super talented and could be the next great Olympian, How do you make sure that they're put in an environment in high school at a young age that can allow them to continue to grow and nurture their athletic ability? That's a very difficult, that's a very difficult issue that's presented in any sport. It's not just track and field. That's in any sport. So, it's a fine line. It's a dilemma that plagues a lot of sports and a lot of young athletes. So, I think that, you just have to have a team around you that all understand what's going on. They all understand the pros and the cons, and they can kind of work together. I'm not saying that that a young athlete should have to go train in an environment that's not able to allow them to grow and allow them to be developed. I don't think that that's the answer or that's the solution. But I also don't think that every athlete that comes up that has some type of, that shows this talent, needs to be coached, privately and separated from the rest of their team if they are representing and participating with that team. If they choose not to participate or represent a high school and just run unattached or run, by themselves or, compete, whether it's any sport, by themselves and unattached from another from a high school that they attend, then that's fine. But if they still want to compete and want to represent the high school that they attend, along with other athletes that attend that school as well, then I feel like there needs to be some kind of level playing field across the board. Maybe the private coach could assist the high school coaches and allow the team to get developed as a whole, and that can make it funner for all the athletes, because it's not just one person being singled out and getting all this special attention, but everybody getting the same type of resources or the same type of training or the same type of support that can help them become the greatest athletes that they can be. Because you never know, you could have a jewel that's sitting on the high school team being coached by someone that's really not knowledgeable of the sport or doesn't know the ins and out, or doesn't know how to properly develop that athlete. They could be that could be a jewel, a diamond in the rough that's just sitting there, that once they got polished, they're actually could be I don't want to say better than the star athlete, but they could be just as good, or they could perform up to the same standards as the star athlete. So it's just so many things that go on to that. I mean, I definitely understand that all high schools don't have the top-notch coaches, because a lot of times at high schools your coaches are ones that work inside that high school. A lot of times they just hire within the high school. If a facility member, a faculty member has some type of knowledge of the sport and they like the sport and they just say, okay, I want to train, I want to work with the kid, then they might have the job, but they're not necessarily the right right coach or mentor that's able to get those athletes to their best abilities, or they don't know how to properly train or just develop those kids. So it's not a knock on the high school system, but sometimes it just is what it is. And so what do you do about that? You can't, a lot of times you can't just send your kid or your athlete to a school that has a good sports program, because you don't live in that jurisdiction. If it's a public school, or if it's a private school, maybe the private school costs way too much money, and you can't afford to put your kid through private school while they're in high school, because you're still trying to figure out how you're going to get them through college. So that's a understandable situation as well. So this is just, again, we're having a discussion about winning at any cost. And so at the high school level, there's, a lot of things that can go into play. You might feel like, okay, well, you're going to use someone else's address that you don't live in the jurisdiction of, a certain high school, but that high school has a good reputation for sports, so they are developing, the kids that are going to the next level. And so, you may use, someone else's, a family member's or friend's address to get them in. I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I mean, sometimes it happens. I'm not here to, judge anyone or anything that's going on. But my point is that, these are things that parents, these are things that coaches, these are things that athletes are doing at a young age in high school. We're talking about high school and age group right now, that they're trying to win at any cost. And what's the cost of that? What's the cost of doing that? What's the unintended consequences of doing those type of taking those type of steps to ensure that at the end of the day, it's all to ensure that the athlete has the best resources and the best future going forward. And so, like I said, when you're in age group track, putting, or finding coaches that are pushing those athletes, and actually sometimes maybe burning them out at a young age. And then you're getting into high school, you might be coached by a private coach, but you're still attending a public high school that has a coach, and their coaches, coaching the rest of the team, your teammates. So, what is the unintended consequences of those type of things? And then also, as I developed this series of winning at all costs, so if you start off like that, if you start off in age group track and you're, pushed really hard, and then you go to a high school and you're just getting coached by a private coach, or you go to a high school that you feel like, okay, I'm gonna, use somebody else's address to get into a high school that, that has the best program, but I really shouldn't be going to this high school because I don't live in this jurisdiction. If you're doing those type of things, you're winning at any cost or developing yourself at any cost. What kind of mentality? What does that teach you? What does that teach you going forward? When you get to the next level, are you going to continue to cut every corner or continue to take every advantage that you could get in order to win? So this is how I plan to develop this series. Is just at each level, you build and you build and you build, and sometimes being inspired and being motivated to win and to be your best at a young age, how it could eventually turn into doing some things that may be illegal, or doing some things that may not be the best ethical actions to take in order to win. So this is what this segment is really about, the winning at any cost series in the Let's Talk About It segment that I'm doing. This is kind of what it's about, just having the discussions about some of the things that go on that when athletes are pushed to win at any cost at the various levels, whether it be age group, high school, college, or professional. So if you guys have any things you want to talk about, leave some comments. I have in my next video of this series, I'm going to talk about winning at every cost in the collegiate scene. So we'll discuss that, and then I'll do a video about winning at any cost in the professional scene. So I just want to broaden out, step away from the on-track performances, the on-track action, and just have a behind-the-scenes discussion. Hopefully we can have some discussion in the comments. So if you haven't already liked or subscribed to the Track and Field Bleacher Reporter channel, please do so. I want to cover some different topics. I don't want to always have it be about the on-track performances, and so hopefully this video was different from the videos that I've done previously with my NCAA previews for 2018. But I want to step out from all the on-track action sometimes. Just have a open, let's talk about it discussion. So thank you for tuning in to the Track and Field Bleacher Report. Again, I'm your official host, the Trackhead here, and this is the Let's Talk About It series, and we were talking about winning at any cost at the age group track and high school track level, but it was really more so about age group sports and age in high school sports. It wasn't really specifically about track, but this is the Track and Field channel, so I wanted to relate it to track and field. So thank you for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed yourself. Hope you have a good new year.